Hello everyone, this is Tim, and this is going to be a summary of the first session of the continuation of my campaign. It's sort of a breakdown because they left the town. So the first campaign is pretty much them hanging out in Pembrooktonshire, and this campaign is them heading off to doing other things. So they left, and it took them some time because the hills and the roads around Pembroktonshire are a myriad of winding roads, and it's hard to navigate where you're going. And there seems to be some sort of spell or some incantation that affects movement in and out of the town. So it took them a while to get out. But as they were stuck in the hills, they found this man who was face down in the road. His intestines were ripped out. His stomach was split from neck to pelvis, and he had a dragon-like walking stick with him. They investigated the scene, and they found that there was a little bit of a digging spot right below him, and it looked like he had buried something. They also noticed that there wasn't very much blood in the area, so it seemed like he was killed somewhere else and then brought here. They looked at the walking stick. It seemed to have some sort of properties where it helps the user with physical motion, walking, jumping, that sort of thing, but it eventually becomes a curse. In that area that was dug, Rayhan dug down, and he found that there was a locket. There was a pretty woman on one side and a young man on the other side, and the young man looked like a younger version of this old man. And they guessed that he had buried it to prevent someone from finding it. So they made a camp, and they were sharing some tales about Sergei's family being killed by wolves, and that's when they heard the screaming. There was a man who was cutting himself and scratching his arms, and he had a dagger, and he was like flaying his own flesh off of his bones, screaming, "Get them off me! Get them off me!" And they just thought he was crazy. So Rayhan ran into him and just slammed right into the side of him. And in the process, he basically got these invisible insects that were being transferred from body to body whenever wherever there's contact. So he started scratching like crazy. And then Sergei tried to stop him, and he grabbed his arm, and then the bugs went to him. So it was sort of like an insect hot potato that was being passed around, and it didn't really do anything at first, but as they could see from this man, whose arms were just torn in horrible ruins, that they do eventually probably take the life of their owner. So it took them some time, but they realized that if they used a torch, they could kill all the bugs that were moving around their feet, and then just bring the flames real close to their face and the arms and so forth, and that way they could kill the bugs. So eventually that worked. Uh, Ramowsy had to use a hold person spell on this poor man that they would later learn of as Hans. That was his name. And Hans told them many things. They weren't really sure what to accept as truth or not, but that's kind of the fun of it. He told them about the Cantal Empire that was coming south, and they were supposedly coming because they were looking for revenge. That there were two sects, sects, two schisms of the Church of the All, and one is called the Devout and one is called the Righteous. And these different ideas on how to worship this deity have produced this war, and they're not really sure if this king of this empire is actually devout or righteous, or if he even cares at all about this religious schism. He might just be looking to expand his empire. So he's coming south, and supposedly he is aligned with the devout, and he is heading south to the city of Wurzburg, and the prince bishop that rules there is of the righteous. So they're a different religious denomination. But Hans, as he took them back to his house, was telling them about his wife and kids and how they had left, but that he did not want to leave his town, that he wanted to stay, that he wanted to basically just wait until the army passed, and then hopefully everything would be fine again. And the town he was from Hammelburg. So another thing they learned is that the Prince Bishop of Wurzburg was not sending any troops out to protect any of the outlying towns, but instead was keeping them all behind his secure, thick walls. There were rumors about insects carrying off animals, huge insects, townsfolk being hurt, and he basically told them that he thinks the world is ending. There's a place called Goblin Hill that was nearby, that supposedly one of the witches had set up some sort of domain or something, but he thought it might be more safe that it's an out-of-the-way spot. Maybe the army would pass it by, so he's thinking about going there. Hans also told him about the Seven, who are a group of witches that are running the town of Karlstadt, and that they all have creatures or animals that they hang out with and give them powers, maybe. He's not really sure. There's lots of rumors going on. So 30 or 40,000 soldiers are coming from the north down. They're stuck in the middle. The group kind of chuckled that they're going to have to either move through Pembroktonshire or move around it to get to where they are. And they said that the armor stands no chance. So I took that as a compliment, and I hope James Raggi does too, since that place is so messed up. The Seven had banned all forms of public worship, and they had also banned armor and weapons. They, it sounds like they are doing a lot of changes to this town of Karlstadt, and Hans doesn't appreciate any of it. He called them heathens, and yeah, because all this stuff is happening. That's why I think the end of the world is coming. They bumped into a group of peacekeepers that were from Karlstadt, and they were holding banners up with a dove and a broken sword and 3 stars, and they called themselves the Citizens Peace Patrol. And they basically said, come with us. The Seven will protect you from the army that's coming. The Prince Bishop will not. Anybody that goes there is going to die, and so on and so forth. And the group pretty much convinced them that they're going to go with Hans back to his town. And, there was almost an altercation there, but they decided to leave peacefully. They were told by this peace patrol of Magdeburg, where the devout, 20,000 of them all in all, were killed by the righteous, and the city was burned and razed to the ground. And some say that that's a motivation for this empire coming down to basically kill all of the righteous for this treachery, for this violence. I guess someone may even say, holy war, genocide. They got to the town where Hans lived, Hammelburg, and they found trails of discarded items, lots of empty places, and eventually they went to Hans's place. There was also a rumor that these giant insects were perhaps coming from Goblin Hill. There were kids' rooms and so forth that were there. It looked like the guy was legit, and the next morning they all woke up after their dreams. But during the night, Sergei had a dream of cows being eaten by insects. There was various dreams of Ramalzi getting more comfortable with his magic, and Rayhan feeling the light of the sun on his face. Vidartha was shining down on him. So the morning scene, there was breakfast, and they all were sitting down, and the man was serving them cider and meat. And then the man left, and they were discussing what to do. Should they even help these people? Can they do anything? And during the process, there was this strange aftertaste, this sweet aftertaste in the meat, and they all started getting a little nervous. And Sergei started asking some questions. What does it taste like? What's it like? And Hans was outside, coming out from the basement with strips of meat, and he was putting them on sticks and heating them up over the fire. And that's when Sergei ran downstairs to see what was going on. Down there, he found the man's wife hung up by the ankles. She was tied up, and she was dead for some time. There were tied up hands. That was all that was left. There was no other parts of the body. It seemed that the man had been eating his own family. His wife and children did not go south, and later he would tell them that he had killed them so that the army couldn't, and that this way they would be forever with him. So the only one who didn't eat the meat, I believe, was Sergei, because he had that dream with the cows, and he was talking about the 3 cows in Pembroktonshire that didn't sleep, and that freaked him out. It was a bad omen. So the only non-cannibal in the group at this point is Sergei, Mallow, and Tavis. That's Alex's character, who didn't play. So eventually they killed off Hans, and they burned the house to the ground. They were pretty disturbed by the whole thing. So that happened. There was a center in town, and in that center there was a sign that said, "The Seven will protect us. Head to Karlstadt." And Sergey basically kicked it over, and then he threw it in the woods because he didn't want to support them at all. And they decided that Goblin Hill was the place to go. It's off the beaten track. Maybe the army will pass them by. Maybe they'll find something of interest there. They didn't seem very interested in going to Karlstadt, where these witches were. And they saw, when they finally got there, it took them about 4 hours, and they climbed the hill, but there were lots of boot prints and lots of strange circular marks in the ground. And there was an entryway that was covered by loose brush. So they moved the brush and found this cave, and they headed down it. But up from the bottom of the cave came this giant black wasp that was trying to sting them in their chest. And luckily for Sergey and Rayhan, it didn't hit them. But for Amalzi, the stinger went right into his stomach and pumped him full of fluid. He felt the pressure of it expanding in the inside of him. But eventually they did kill it. The last that we left off, they were planning on heading down into the caves to explore a little bit more. So that was pretty much the summary. I hope that I can continue doing these at a pretty good pace. I was a little rushed this morning, and I kind of skipped over some parts, but that's pretty much the rough idea of what happened. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.